day, I'm Dr. T and welcome to my office. So, historically, AI chatbots have been not all that impressive. You put in a prompt, it gives you a couple paragraphs worth of text that is, on the surface, text. But if you start thinking about it too much, it's kind of on the incoherent side. It's fairly obvious if a student were to say, take the essay question, plug it into the chat box, and then upload whatever they got back as their answer. It would look like either they used an AI or they were drunk. Well, things are changing. In November, ChatGPT was released, or the newest version of it was released. And, well, I'm going to take a couple of prompts that I used for some essay tests for my online survey of chemistry course. I'll let you see if they're particularly incoherent. Go ahead, pause the screen to read it. I'm not going to leave them up for too awful long. Okay, welcome back. Yeah, that was not incoherent at all. That was actually pretty good. That was, in many respects, keep in mind I'm dealing with first year non-major students, better than most of the answers I actually get. Stylistically, there was some notable stylistic quirks to them, but nothing that is really wrong. Some of the terminology is definitely not wrong, but not what I would use in the course, and not kind of the customary biochemist approach. It's not what their textbooks would be using. Not what I would be using, but in other disciplines it would be what those other disciplines would be using. And there is some information in there that is definitely beyond the scope of a survey of chemistry course, a GOB course. So there's definitely several parts to that that would make me go, something's up. Also, it gives a lot of background information, very much written like a textbook or an encyclopedia article. And most of the ones that I did about 20 of these, were around 400 or so words. I think the cap appears to be in the 500s. I think the longest one I had was 544 words and it stopped mid-sentence, so I assume it hit a cap. The shortest was 200 and some. And with these, that's generally larger than what I expect for this kind of prompt for an essay test. I'm used to getting, 200 words, maybe even less than 100 words. Definitely a bit less detail and a bit less going off into side details and specific examples. So this definitely would stand out. If student uploaded this to, as their answer to their essay test, I would know something was up, I think. There was at least one of them I would not have known. There was one where it's like, this is the perfect answer. But even if I knew something was up, could I prove it? Nope. I mean, it's entirely possible a student could submit something that looked like that just because they are a somewhat quirky writing student. I'm pretty sure I've seen material similar to that a few years ago before ChatGPT had been released to the public. That, hey, if it wasn't a couple of years ago, I would be really suspicious. But a couple of years ago, the AI was pretty much pathetic. So it could be a false positive. I don't want to charge a student with academic dishonesty, have horrible things happen to them for nothing, because even though they were innocent, I don't want to do that. And even if they are guilty, once again, admin doesn't want that. They're not going to throw them under the bus without proof. How can I prove that? Short answer is I can't. There's some software that's able to, and I've not used it, but there's some software that's able to look at styles of writing. But once again, maybe the student just has that style of writing. Your plagiarism detection software, I have Turnitin, probably is not going to catch it because this isn't like it's just copying it from someplace. Instead, it's creating it fresh. Although I did notice that when I did the same prompt more than once, or I did very similar prompts, the responses were identical or very, very close. So the plagiarism detection software might actually detect it if two students used it, or if maybe there was a way to feed that information into the plagiarism detection software in advance. Me from the future, I need to stop myself right here because I've made a dreadful mistake. Okay, so I'm trying to think, hey, maybe the plagiarism detection software will work because the answers are very similar each time. Yeah, that's a faulty premise. So in the one session that I did, so I created a session and then I did like 20, 30, about 20 different responses. The answers were very similar in that session. Now, I don't know if there's some kind of RNG thing going on, random number generator, thing going on so that each session is unique. So responses within the same session would be the same, but not between different sessions, which completely defeats the point. I'm not going to have the same session as the student cheating. Or if it is simply in the intervening 2 weeks since I did the first part and did my research, that it has grown enough. I have heard there were some updates, and I'm going to be honest, several of the prompts that I tried the second time around were better than the first time around. Not all. One was actually noticeably worse. But I mean, they were definitely very believable. So plagiarism detection software, that is not going to work. Now, there are software popping up online that are AI powered, that are looking for AI text. Now, I don't know how these work, and I'm guessing no one does. Good old artificial intelligence, you don't actually know what's under the hood. It's a black box to literally everyone. So these are spitting out, hey, this looks to be 95% or 89% human generated, or 100% human generated, or 12% or whatever. I tested one, I think it was from writer.com. It seemed to work reasonably well. I had some text that I knew was human generated, so I sped it into there and it got very high marks for being human generated. I had some text that I had pulled from ChatGPT, and it generally got some very low marks for human generated. So it was working. Now, of course, this working, into the year 2022, next upgrade to ChatGPT or the next AI chatbot, who knows if that will still work. I don't know about the false positives. Once again, the very limited sample set I had, it didn't have false positives. But that doesn't mean in a larger sample set whether or not I would get false positives. And just to make life even more interesting, because it's AI, because it's a black box, how do you say that this proves the person cheated? The person goes like, no, I didn't cheat. I wrote this. And, takes it up through appeal. How, if you can't explain other than, well, this computer told me, is that going to be sufficient proof? And once again, not okay to accuse someone and punish them for cheating when they didn't do anything wrong. It's just they write in a somewhat dull, computerized style. But once again, that's going to evolve over time. Trying to do an automated solution, I don't think that's going to be a viable option. So where do we go from here? Well, on r/professors, one of the major themes was, well, let's just go pen and paper. Good old blue books. Okay, I remember blue books. I didn't think I was that old, but I am that old. And, ugh. Do we really want to do that? I mean, talk about not universal design. As a dyslexic, it's like, ugh. Of course, I'd have accommodations, but still. And, well, I'd have to read all those things. But if it's not a, say, essay test, which, I do those occasionally. If it is instead, say, a research paper, I mean, you can't do a research paper while proctored. It takes hours to do a research paper. You have to go on the internet and get resources. That's part of the learning objectives, is learning to go get good sources. Learning to use the web, learning to use the library, maybe, hopefully. So how do you go about getting around this? And short answer is I don't really know, because presumably a student could take a research paper and do, the intro, and then the next part, the next part, the next part. ChatGPT does appear to have a 500 and some odd word limit cap, but I mean, just do it a few dozen times and boom, you can get a nice long one. Each time gets you about a page. It would be a little bit rough in between potentially, but not if you could write the prompts really good. yeah, this is going to make things interesting. I don't have a particularly good solution. Now, one thing I did notice is I did try and have it do the introduction of a lab report. I didn't see any way to actually get it to write a lab report. I tried to get it to write a lab report, and it basically gave me a, here's how you write a lab report. So I don't know if that was a safeguard in there of like, I'm not writing your lab report for you, or if that was, well, the lab report's not going to be 500 words. But I did have it do the introduction to one, which I'll show you here. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. Okay, okay introduction. Not necessarily the angle I would have gone, but an okay introduction. Those references, though, I tried looking those up on Google Scholar. I wasn't successful. I don't think they're real. And other faculty I've seen online discussing this don't think the references that it's giving are real. It is references that look like the types of references that the computer would have trained on when looking at text. So, one way of spotting this for a cited paper would be to check the references. Now, typically in higher ed, Wikipedia is not going to be a valid reference. Encyclopedias are just too low down the totem pole. And I did do a version of that where I didn't say peer-reviewed references or peer-reviewed citations. I just said citations, and it gave me a Wikipedia and a Britannica article. Both of those links actually worked. It wasn't exactly the link, but it was close enough that the browser and Wikipedia were able to redirect it to where it needed to go. So, was it using those? No, I think it was just guessing. And Wikipedia pages have fairly obvious naming systems because, of course they do. Why would you do an encyclopedia any other way? So one approach is to check those references. Now, this is going to be fairly time-consuming, and most faculty don't have a lot of time to consume. Grading lab reports or grading essays takes forever, and now if you have to spend 3 or so minutes checking references on each one, okay, if you got 1 or 2, no big deal. You got 20, that's an hour extra work. That's annoying, not a horrible deal. You have 120, that's 6 extra hours. There goes a day. That can become somewhat labor intensive. A few references that I saw were suggesting things such as having students upload the first page of each one of their citations or something like that to cut that 3 minutes down to much shorter and verify that these citations really are real. Although, to be honest, if you were going to do it right, you would read the citations and then read the paper and make sure they matched up right, and that's going to take forever. There is a second, somewhat more distant and somewhat more extreme problem that having highly effective artificial intelligence text generators creates. Not just cheating, but also this does redefine the nature of work. If you have somebody whose job is to research and write some kind of report, well, the computer can do it for them in a mere fraction of the time. So what value do they add? Our students, and well, ourselves, unless we're nearing retirement, will be entering into a world where a lot of the human labor that we are used to having been done is now going to start transitioning to computer-derived labor, good old artificial intelligence. CGP Grey did a video several years ago titled "Humans Need Not Apply," arguing that this is actually an existential threat to the majority of humans, at least all but the super wealthy. So we want to be thinking about teaching our students skills that are going to be more automated resistance. How can they use the artificial intelligence that's creating this text and do a value add to that? Make sure that they're not rendered utterly obsolete by the computer. We don't want to have another John Henry kind of thing, just with typing. So we might want to start thinking about assignments that utilize the AI-generated text, and if you can't beat them, join them. Then use that to do value add to that. And so just kind of brainstorming myself, my thoughts would be, well, generating that prompt is actually kind of a big deal. When doing research, the hardest part is getting those keywords. What do you put in the search engine? If you can figure that out, you're good to go. But that's actually a fairly important skill. So presumably getting that prompt to be where you want it to be would be a fairly important skill. This is something that things are evolving too much right now to really become an expert. Well, a few people are probably becoming experts on this, but in general, kind of rolling this out on how to write good prompts. Things are changing too much. That's not something we're going to be able to do in the next few years, probably. But that is something we're probably going to be seeing down the future. Additionally, what do you do with this text once you get that? Kind of in the immediate future, one of my thoughts is have it write, the 500 words or so, and then have the student annotate that. Explain what each part is. Kind of, do it like a Wikipedia article or do footnotes. Some way modify it. Transform that work into something new. This allows the student to show that they know what they're doing. Not by creating a work, but by transforming a work that the AI had already done. And presumably taking AI-generated work and transforming that and improving that would be a value add proposition for the future for those students in their later careers. So maybe this is the way that we utilize this. If we think about math, we've got calculators that set a whole bunch of people to obsolescence. The old definition of computer was a person that did math. It was a job description, not a device. But as computers took over that role, we were able to change the value add, change the nature of work so that we use that as a tool to make even better, more valuable products. How do we do this with AI text generators and the future of AI? I don't know. But I think that's the next thing that we as faculty are going to have to be dealing with. First, we're going to have to address right immediately before spring 2023, how do we address potential AI-based cheating approaches? How do we mitigate that? How do we detect? How do we discourage? And then, going forward, how do we transform our learning objectives to doing value add, assuming the AI is present? We're not going to be able to say, don't use this forever. I was young. It was like, well, you won't have a calculator every day. Yeah, I've got a calculator with me. I've got a calculator strapped to my hip. I got this guy. I got another one. Yeah, that didn't happen. So now we got tons of calculators. Future, this AI is not going away. This is going to become normal and integrated within our society. How do we make sure our students are prepared to be able to value add to it so that they don't go obsolete? Yeah, I don't know. So best of luck trying to figure this out. We're all in it together. See you next time.